Hi, welcome. Today we got Cullen Horowicz, 2021 corner infielder, recent signee with Army. Played some travel baseball with the Richmond Braves and the Appalachian Aces. Cullen, appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So for those who don't know who you are, tell me a little bit about your family.
So my family, I have two brothers. One of them's in high school. He's a junior this year. He also plays corner infield. And I mean, he's starting to talk to colleges right now, and he's going through the same process that I went through recently. So that's what he's in the middle of right now, which with COVID, obviously, it's a little bit different than when I went through the process, or at least when I started the process and most of the process for me. So it's a little more difficult for him. I also have a younger brother than that who is in sixth grade this year. He also plays baseball, plays basketball. He plays a lot of sports, does mixed martial arts. So, he's kind of he's the rough one in the family, I guess you could say. He's the tough one. And then I have my father, my mother are the other side of the room right now. But that's pretty much my family. I have two dogs as well. I have a dog named Rex and another dog named Bella, some standard poodles. So that's my family. Yes, sir.
That's the full build. Okay. So obviously, like the recruiting process, man, a lot of ups and downs. Talk to me about maybe some of the high points that where you were really excited about either the what you were doing, or you're getting some interest for some coaches. When you look back, what were the high points?
Yeah. So for me, recruiting wise, I actually started getting recruited pretty late. I started getting recruited the end of my sophomore summer about, which that's not necessarily late, but for me it is on the Braves because, a lot of the other kids on my team were committed or pretty far down that road. So for me, that was pretty late, but it was also the right time. The high point for me was for sure the PBR Futures games. I went there and I played with Team Pennsylvania because Team West Virginia doesn't have a team right now. And actually, I played pretty well, and that's when I started to get kind of all my interest. I started talking to some schools then, and actually a high point for me, I committed to Campbell University. They have a great program there originally. I committed there, and like I said, they have a great program. They're a program on the rise, but my decision to go from Campbell to West Point was not about baseball. It was about something more than baseball. It was about serving the country. And, that means a lot to me and my family. And that's definitely a high point as well, coming to West Point.
Sure, sure. So tell me about that process. So you're on a team, you're on a really competitive team. You've got guys who are, they're committing from here to there. Tell me about that pressure, how that builds, and how did you handle that?
Well, honestly, it was a little bit discouraging at first just because I didn't hit my stride freshman year. I wouldn't say at all. I had a pretty bad freshman year, high school wise. I don't think I batted above 200 actually in West Virginia high school baseball. So that's batting that way for high school baseball in West Virginia is a long way from, I guess, getting committed to a Division I school. So it's been a long road for me, but it was definitely discouraging as well. But at the same time, it also forced me to work harder because those kids were all already committed, and I knew they worked hard. And I've always worked hard my entire life, but that just gave me that extra push to continue to work even harder.
So obviously it takes some measurables to get coaches to come see you play. What's been your measurable development?
My measurables that were big for me are my exit velo and my infield velocity. And I remember a couple milestones. I remember a PBR event right before my sophomore year, I threw 86 across the infield, I believe. And I was really excited about that. Just, throwing that was definitely a milestone for me because before that, the hardest I threw was 83, I believe, at a prospect camp. So that's, the 3 mile per hour jump is pretty big in terms of metrics, especially in a short period of time. So that was a big jump for me. That also helped me to get ranked, which I can imagine helped my views on PBR and other sites. A big measure for me was exit velo, which I don't remember anything specifically for that. But the big thing is that it continued to climb. So college coaches can see that I haven't reached a peak or anything like that yet, and that I was continuously improving and bettering myself and my numbers.
So like when we talked on the phone, I saw you at the home run derby. What event did that take place at?
It took place at Globe Life Park, I believe, Globe Life Field, which is the home of the Texas Rangers, and it was just a great event. It's amazing competing against the best power hitters in the country, especially because the World Series was there this year. Actually,
Who sponsored
about
that?
a week.
Was that Under Armour? Was that a PG?
No, sir. Well, the owner and I guess CEO, I would imagine, of Power Showcase is Brian Domenico, and he does a great job of putting on the events. He goes and I believe purchases the venue for the time. He puts on a great dinner for us, a welcome ceremony where we get our uniform, like our jerseys and whatnot. And then the first day is a scout day, which is a great event also just because, I mean, it's anytime you can get in front of any type of scout or get any looks at all, it's a great opportunity and you should take it. So that's 100% a great opportunity. And then the Power Showcase Home Run Derby is obviously why everyone goes. It's just amazing to stay on that type of field and in that type of atmosphere and be able to compete against, I guess, the country's best power hitters.
So what's that? How many have you done home run contests in the past? Have you had much success there, or what were you thinking?
So that was my second one, actual organized home run competition, home run derby. And my first one, I went and I didn't know what to expect, honestly. I mean, obviously it was amazing to play in a professional stadium. We played it at Diamondback Stadium, Arizona Diamondback Stadium, which I believe is Chase Field last year. I went last year and I ended up advancing from the preliminary round of the home run derby because I got the wild card, which basically two people would usually advance, but if one of those two people does not hit the longest home run, then that person advances as well. So I hit 460, and that was the longest, so I advanced. And when I advanced, I mean, I was the wild card, so no one really expected me to do anything. But once I got there, I did pretty well in the championship round, and I ended up losing by one home run. So that was definitely kind of my motivation to come back this year, especially just so I could come back and win it. That was kind of what I had in my mind. And I knew not to sound like, I'm not trying to sound arrogant or anything like that, but I 100% like knew in my mind that I was going to go back and win it and compete at my best and my highest level.
What were some of the numbers you threw up there? What were some of the? I mean, that's like MLB numbers, 460, and what were some of the, what were the long ones in the exit velos?
So that was actually last year, and my numbers jumped a lot to this year. And we're talking about measurables. My wood bat longest was 490 feet, and I believe my X velo was 100 and I'm not positive, 119, I believe. And then my metal bat home run went 501 feet was the longest, and I'm not exactly sure about that exit velo.
Wow. That's stunning, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So when you look back at the recruiting process, what do you look at as your big break? So maybe we look back, maybe the offer that where you made the commitment to Campbell and then to Army. Maybe what were the two breaks there that you look back and said, man, that if I had done this, man, I don't think that would have happened.
100% the PBR futures games. If that didn't happen, I probably would not have gotten the amount of attention that I did and the offers from schools that I ended up getting, or talking to schools even in the first place. I think I was talking to one or two schools maybe before that, and it was kind of off and on. So it really wasn't anything extremely like urgent at that point. But that was definitely my big break, I'd say. I had a great high school season before that as well, but I ended up getting hurt over the summer before that, and I didn't have the best summer. But that's a pretty big summer. Your sophomore summer in terms of recruiting is usually a pretty big time. So I didn't do very well, and that was at the end of the summer. And I ended up going there and showing out, and that was kind of the reason that I got attention from Campbell and all the other schools that I was talking to.
So how do you end up at the PBR 60? I mean, they're pulling the 60 best kids they can get to go to that event. West Virginia didn't have a team. Or what? So how did that work, and who was instrumental in making that happen?
Josh Kuykendall. He 100% is the reason he got me on the team. I believe he reached out to them and just pretty much made it happen. And I'm very thankful for him for that, because like I said, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, looks like you showed up pretty good. You made him look like a genius.
maybe they'll start taking more kids from West Virginia, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. It's an under recruited state. It's not super respected as far as the level of play. So I think it's a little bit tougher for guys to earn, to get guys to come see them play. So well done, man. The more guys that we have that actually, when they do get that chance, show up like you did, the better off we'll be. So when you look back at your recruiting process, are there some mistakes you made that you would maybe talk to like younger players or parents to say, hey, you might want to try to avoid this? I wish, maybe I shouldn't have done this or went there. Or
I made one mistake, and that was that I believe I got discouraged very early in my process. But you can't do that if you want to play baseball at any level, really, because there's so many challenges in baseball and whatnot. Actually, after my freshman year, I was contemplating going to becoming a PO, which I'm obviously glad that I stuck with hitting and fielding. But like I said, just that was the big thing for me, was just getting discouraged about not getting the attention that I thought that I deserved, even though I wasn't playing the best, things like that, where, I mean, when it's your time, it's your time. Everyone's going to commit in their own time. Everyone's going to get offers in their own time. There's no right time necessarily to get an offer. There's no right time to commit. It's when it's right for you.
Yeah. So when you look back, what was the first thing you did in the recruiting process? You send an email? Did you go to an event? Do you remember back what kind of the first few things you did?
Yeah. So when I was in 8th grade, I went to a overnight camp at UVA for baseball, and that was kind of my first taste of it. And then next, I believe actually that later that week, I went to a prospect camp at Wake Forest. So that was kind of my first little, like I said, taste of that and that atmosphere. And then shortly after that, I joined the Richmond Braves. And when I did that 100% showed me different places to play college baseball, just showcase ball in general.
So how important is the decision for a player when they choose their travel organization? How big a deal of that is that in the process, and how big a deal is that for you? And how did you end up with the Braves?
It's very important what program you play for and what they do for you. I don't know much about other organizations actually at all. I tried out for a couple, but I didn't like it there, so I didn't end up playing there. But I ended up playing for the Braves, and that was probably the best decision of my life, because I had a coach that 100% had my best interest in mind. And, well, I mean, like I said, he's one of those people that if I didn't have him in my life, I wouldn't be committed somewhere. He is also my hitting coach. So, I mean, obviously, it's pretty instrumental in what I do daily in my life. But, I mean, I'd say the Richmond Braves are very important to me, and your showcase organization is very important to what you want to do and how you want to play. My coach, like I said, his name's Coach Ty. He does a lot for us, and it's really a family there. So I'd say if you want to go play showcase baseball or travel baseball, go play for the Richmond Braves.
So tell me how you end up with the Braves. I mean, you're playing in West Virginia. You're not getting a whole lot of activity. How do you end up there?
Well, I ended up playing West Virginia baseball when I was 14. I played for a team called the Jefferson Cubs, but while I was playing for them, I played for a team called the Shutdown Orioles. And when I played for Shutdown Orioles, we kind of went to some of the bigger tournaments, like Sports at the Beach at the time was kind of like a fun big tournament for kids of that age. And some of the bigger tournaments played against the Kings, played against big competition. So that kind of allowed for me to see that stage of baseball and play at that level. And once I kind of got introduced to that level of baseball, I knew that I needed to play that level of baseball to play the next level and be successful. So my mom helped me to find some teams. I went and did some tryouts, and I ended up with the Braves, which, like I said, was a great decision for me.
Awesome, man. So tell me about the communication process with coaches. Do you remember the first time a coach either reached out to you or coach said, "Hey, this guy wants you to call him"?
I do remember. Actually, I believe it's funny because I believe the first school that reached out to me was Navy, so Army-Navy rivalry. But we had this kid Corey that was committed at my high school to Navy, and they came to the game, and I think he was there for batting practice in the first couple innings infield, and I ended up doing pretty well during batting practice and infield. And I talked to him, and I reached out, started sending him video. We started talking. But I will say the one thing is, once you start talking to one school, generally, if there's any other schools interested, they'll start to actually be more active with you and start talking to you as well. But that definitely helped to kickstart my recruiting process.
So how does that normally work? Because a lot of guys like yourself are getting interest in your freshman, sophomore year. Obviously, coaches can't call you. So are they calling like your high school coach, your travel coach, and saying, "Hey, I'd like for him to give me a call," and then you call at a certain time? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's pretty much like that. But I've played for 3 teams, or like about 3. I've had coaches reach through 3. I've had college coaches reach through 3 coaches to get to me. I've had them reach through my high school organization. I've had them reach through my Braves organization. And then I've also had them reach through my PBR organization when I was at the Futures Games, because they'd reach through them because I'm not sure what the exact date is. I believe it's September 1st of your junior year is when they can call you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's changed because of COVID.
No,
but basically they would just reach out. They'd be like, "We'd like what we see. Do you think he'd be interested to give us a call at this time of the day on this day?" And you would say, "Yep, that's fine." And they'd pretty much go through a middleman and arrange it that way.
So what's for those players or maybe parents watching that they've not been on a phone call with a coach? What's a typical phone call like?
Well, I mean, if they're calling you, usually they're the ones kind of running the conversation, trying to get to know you, what your interests are, what your schedule is, things like that. And also, I think that if you're on a call with a college coach, you should probably have some questions yourself. So just probably do some research beforehand just about like the campus, the program, what their goals are, just things like that, so that you can also be educated about it. And it also lets them know that you have questions and you are holding interest in what they're doing there.
So you mentioned several offers. What were the time frames that the offers started showing up?
So like I said, the Futures Games was kind of what kickstarted that. And right after the Futures Games, I ended up going on a visit to Elon. And that was my first visit. And then after Elon, about a week later, I went to William & Mary. After William & Mary, about a week later, I went to Campbell. It was a pretty hectic 3-week spread there. With
this is your sophomore or junior summer?
So this is my junior fall.
Junior fall, okay.
I believe, because so I ended up going to visits there. And then the next day after my visit to Campbell, I ended up committing there.
So did you get the offer for Campbell? Was that on the visit there? Like you meet at the coach's office at the end? And
yes. So when I was talking to the coaches, we kind of discussed like the logistics of it and whatnot. But when I got there, he actually had it like for me, and we discussed it and got all the bits and pieces figured out about the offer.
So the next day, that's when you called him back. You said you wanted to take a little time with it.
Yep. Yes, sir. I ended up calling them and saying that I wanted to play there, and yes, sir. I also ended up calling the other coaches and telling them that I was not going to be playing at their schools, just to thank them for everything in the process and whatnot. And like I said, if you're going through the process, I could definitely recommend doing that, just so you can keep connections, not burn any bridges. You never know what's going to happen in the future.
So that's probably a tough call for a young man to make. I mean, these coaches, you've had conversations with you, they're getting to know you, and then you got to call them and say, hey, I've committed somewhere else. What's that call like?
It's a hard call. It's something you have to do, I believe, just because of the integrity of it, and just basically thanking them for taking their time and actually recruiting you and whatnot, because they could easily just walk away, not recruit you, or not give you any time.
What kind of reactions did you get from the coaches?
Basically, I got a lot of good reactions. I got a lot of just, best of luck, hope to see you on the field, things like that. So I got a lot of good reactions out of it. That's a big thing for me too, as well, because my brother was coming up, and like I said, I don't know necessarily where exactly he wants to go. So it allows for him to navigate his path 100% and not have any options cut off.
So when you get the offer, what's the offer look like? They write it on a piece of paper and slide it across the desk. Was it just a verbal offer? For guys that have never had that happen, what's that like?
Well, it was verbal. Pretty much, it's just a agreement, I guess you could say, between people. And then also, like at Campbell, or not Campbell, at West Point, it's not as much of an offer, just because of the fact that, you can't give a scholarship there, but it's more of a roster spot type thing. So that's also a verbal agreement.
So walk me through the process. So, and this happens quite a bit with guys. So you made a commitment to Campbell, and then what changed? What happened in your process?
Right. So I committed to Campbell, and they have a great baseball program. They have great coaches. I love what they're doing there with their program, and they're gonna upset a lot of teams in the future. So I could definitely see them making it to College World Series and having a lot of future success. But the decision for me to decommit from Campbell and commit to an academy at the time was my goal, was to go to an academy. It was bigger than baseball, really, and that's the only way I can describe it. Just I felt that I should be serving in the military at some point in my life, and I feel that West Point gives me the best opportunity to serve while also playing baseball. So it really is the best of both worlds. And yeah, that's kind of that was my process in terms of decommitting from Campbell and then committing to Army.
So is that like a family legacy? Do you have family members, grandparents, other folks in your family that have that military background?
I do. So not necessarily at West Point, but I have a pretty long family history with being in the Army. My dad was in the Army. My grandfather was in the Army. I believe I have multiple grandfathers that were in the Army, actually. My uncle was in the Army. My aunt was in the Army. It's a pretty long line of Horowitzes that were in the military, and my mom's side as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's nice to kind of continue. And then, obviously West Point, man, that's a pretty, that's pretty prestigious. So well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So what's the timeline and the process for the armed services? I imagine that I've never talked to anybody that's been with any of the armed services. What's that process like? And I imagine it's completely different than just the regular recruiting process.
It's 100% different. So when I committed to Army, I had no idea what the process was going to be like after that. But it's definitely not like a regular school we have a portal that we had to fill out with a lot of things on it, with medical examinations, physical examinations. We have to do physical push-up, pull-up, sit-up, mile run, a lot of tests and things of that nature. It's definitely a different process. It's a lot more of being a well-rounded like athlete, I guess you could say, because I know at other schools, I know I have a lot of buddies that committed to other schools, they really don't have to do much of that type of thing. I mean, once you get admitted or accepted into the school, like you're in, and they just have to kind of fill out the application for it and whatnot. But at West Point, it's a pretty lengthy process. Then also I had to get some nominations from people in the government. I had to get accepted into the actual school. So it was definitely a very lengthy process.
So at the time, like I've talked to some guys who have gone to some Ivy League schools, and it's very similar. A lot of times they get recruited, but the hardest part is not having the coach recruit you. It's getting into the school, and you don't find out till later in the process. When you made the commitment there, I'm assuming that's not a guaranteed entrance. It's still outstanding until you can pass all this stuff.
Well, there's a lot of things that can hold you back. The baseball part definitely like aids you and helps you, but it's not going to get you all the way there. Like you're still going to have to obviously keep up with your schoolwork. You're going to have to get a nomination, which is a pretty lengthy process as well. You can't have virtually anything wrong with you in terms of like physical ability or anything like that.
Just write down 119-mile-an-hour exit velo. That should cover a lot of the physical things that they need to do, right? Surely.
Shoot, I wish. That'd take off a lot of pull-ups and push-ups. But it's definitely a different process.
Where are you at in the process now? Are you in, or are you still walking through the steps? Where are you at?
So I went through. I did me and my mother. My mom helped me a lot with the
shout out to mom.
Process of it all. Yeah, with the whole process of it all. But basically, we did the portal, and then after that, I had like some essays in there. The portal is pretty lengthy because it's not just like your average application where you put your essays in, you answer a couple questions, you put your essays in for our portal, then you have to do a medical exam, which is like an eye exam, and then an actual body exam. You have to put a fitness test in pretty much, which is administered by, for me, my JROTC commander. You have to get a nomination as well, which is a whole process in itself. Talking to senators and congressmen and doing interviews, filling out also applications for that. I ended up getting one, and I accepted it from Senator Manchin. So I also got one from Congressman Mooney and Senator Capito. So
that's got to be pretty cool, right? It
was pretty cool. It was process. It was pretty stressful, honestly. I mean, I was talking to this panel of people, and they were asking me some questions about the military, about my life, and I never had to think that hard about, honestly, like basic things. I never had to think that hard about them and the way I was responding. So it was definitely a process and a learning experience. But I ended up getting one and accepting one from Senator Manchin. Then I got accepted into the school. So right now my process is pretty much done.
So I can remember seeing you at some of the showcase events, and I know the one thing that struck me when I walked away was, man, everything that in any of our conversations, it was always yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. So and I tell you what, I'm at a lot of those. I talk to a lot of kids, and man, I don't very, very rarely, if ever, do I get that. So I see that. That's a great match. I can see the West Point. I can see that based on my interactions with you.
Thank you very much. My dad definitely does a good job of teaching us manners and keeping us straight.
So I played college baseball. My oldest son pitched in the Big Ten. So I've got a pretty good idea of, hey, it's a job. When you get there, it's lifting, a lot of team practices outside the schoolwork, but then there's a lot of other shenanigans and, stuff that goes on. What in the world is a day in the life of a West Point baseball player? What's that going to look like? Have they shared with you? Do you get to talk with any of the guys that are there?
I mean, they kind of talked to us about it, and I can't exactly speak on it 100% just because I'm not there, but I know over our first summer we get there, we go through something called Beast, which is pretty much like a modified basic training. So we get our phones taken and we have to do a lot of PT and briefings and things like that. So that's what you do for the first summer. You get a couple days that you can do some baseball activities during that stretch over, I believe, 7 weeks. Then you go into the school year. Your plebe year is very hard at West Point. I guess that's kind of, most people kind of know that, just that's a really hard year in terms of not necessarily hazing, but like learning the way of how you should be handling yourself, and your everyday life changes as a civilian and as, I guess, a college student. And I guess they're expected a lot more than a regular college as well, in terms of academics, socially, things of that nature. Did you see the thing about the cheating scandal?
No.
That was a very big deal. There was a cheating scandal at West Point, and it was a very big deal.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm with you. Now I remember.
It's like, it's just a little different there, but I think that's how it should be. They should be held to a higher standard. And I believe that transfers onto the baseball field too, just discipline wise and things like that.
So what kind of academics do you have, and what did you have to get into West Point?
Well, I know you have to take, I think you have to take an algebra or calculus class, at least one, and I'm taking calc right now, which is probably one of the harder classes I've ever taken in my life. But you had to have a pretty high GPA going into it. I'm not exactly sure what the requirements were. And then also, I believe they might have made it test optional this year just because of COVID and whatnot, and being able to take the SAT or ACT. But you had to have a pretty high SAT or ACT score as well.
So have you had any draft interest in any MLB teams talking to you?
I've had a little bit here and there, nothing definite. Just that seems like almost similar process so far to college with questionnaires and whatnot. That's just kind of what I've been up to in terms of getting that process started. It hasn't been any crazy chatter or anything like that. It's just been a couple of questionnaires and looks from various pro scouts. But the one thing about West Point is that the process of the draft changed for cadets that are playing there. With before, it was very hard to get drafted out of the academy, but now you can actually get drafted and have kind of a 2-year window where if you play well, basically they're going to let you stay and play, but if you're not playing very well, they're going to bring you back to the military, which is, that's kind of a good option anyway, because if you're failing consistently and not moving up, it's going to be really hard to jump up a couple levels. So it kind of gives you that buffer and that thing to fall back on baseball wise as well.
Sure. So what are your long-term plans? What if things go well, what does that mean for Cullen Horowicz?
Well, I want to get drafted. That's kind of my goal ever since I was a baby, kind of. So, or since I started playing baseball, who doesn't want to play in front of hundreds of thousands of fans every night, right? And playing at the best competition. But that's kind of what I wanted to do. If that doesn't happen, then I'm going to go be a special forces operator for the Army. And I haven't exactly figured out that path yet, but I know over my summers at West Point, I can start that process as well as playing in summer leagues now for baseball. So ideally for me, it would be half my summer playing in a summer league and then like a wood bat league. And then the other half of my summer would be going to air assault school, airborne school, something like that.
Awesome, man. So along the way, you got any recruiting stories you want to share? Any funny travel team stories or anything stick out?
I
Anything
honestly don't have
share
anything
publicly?
too crazy. I don't have anything too crazy. I mean, my travel experience ever since I got to high school has been very good. It's been amazing with the Braves. My team at least was very close. We still talk every day, even though we haven't really seen each other for a while. But we're still very close. I say it's pretty fun because as you start to grow, like with a team, especially in a big organization, kind of like the Braves, the Canes, the Dirtbags, you start to play each other a lot. So you kind of start to develop that rivalry with each other. And that's 100% like it's very fun. It's very energetic. And those are some of the most exciting games to play in.
Sure. Well, listen, buddy, Cullen Horowicz, 2021 corner infielder, recent signing with the Army. Buddy, I appreciate you spending some time with us and sharing your story.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.